On this rainy day, I find myself with the time and inclination to address an analogy that keeps being used in the Dawah of the Muslim apologists frequenting or associated with Speaker's Corner. The analogy is used as an argument supposedly to support the claim that an infinite regress to the past is impossible. I'm pretty sure they know the analogy is nonsense, but it offers a smokescreen which they often use to smuggle in a bare assertion or two. It tends to be raised in conversations about the origin of the universe or in the apologists' terrible renditions of the contingency argument. The analogy tends to take the following form. There is a person prepared to carry out an action, but they must seek permission to carry it out. To acquire that permission, the person must ask the first in a chain of people, who each in turn, on being asked a question, relays it to the next person in the chain. The length of the chain is defined to be infinite, that is, without end. For the action to take place, a response giving permission must return back down the chain to the person waiting on that permission. The criteria the apologist imposes on us is that for an actual infinite regress to be possible, we must be able to show that the action can take place. They insist if we fail to do this, then it shows an infinite regress is impossible. The apologists have imposed the analogy, then asks their interlocutor, does the action take place? Here are two examples of Speaker's Corner Muslim apologists offering variations on this. This first one is Smile to Jannah, whose demeanour is for the most part cordial, but this is an insincere facade. He commonly uses the persuasion hack of overly using a person's name to punctuate his points. It's all debate tactics. He's also prone to offering facts that a trivial investigation into them shows how he's plain wrong, either misrepresenting or lying about them.
Right now, what I'm saying is,
well, that's how. But you alluded to.
what I'm saying is that there can't be an infinite regress of dependent things.
Have you proved that? Have you done it?
Well,
have you done?
Believe, that's what you believe.
I'll give you an analogy. For example, if I am to throw a bottle, and I need to ask someone's permission, they need to ask someone's permission, they need to ask someone's permission. If it keeps going on for infinity, will I ever get to throw the bottle?
How do you know? We don't know. Have you done it? Have you done this theory? Have you done this?
It's irrational. So what I'm saying is that this is a logical example that I'm asking.
No, it's not
that
logical.
if I'm throwing a bottle, and I need to ask someone's permission, they need to ask someone's permission, if it goes on for infinity, would I ever get to throw the bottle?
I don't know.
You're illiterate.
I think you do, Ricky.
Because you're illiterate.
That's it. Was it Rick or Ricky?
All right, no, go get medication.
If it goes for infinity and we keep asking for permission, there has to be, that's what I'm alluding to, that there has to be an end to that chain, that somebody at the end of the chain says, you know what, yes you can. Then he tells the person in front of him, yes you can. Then it comes all the way back to me, and then I throw it.
Okay.
So the mere fact that we exist, logically, philosophically, indicates that there has to be an end to that chain of dependent things.
Prove that.
Otherwise, we wouldn't exist.
Okay, prove it then.
That's the point that I'm saying.
Now he needs to prove his claim.
Makes sense, yeah? So this is something...
This second clip is Hamza Maya, probably the happiest of the Dawah apologists to remain blissfully ignorant about pretty much any topic, even his own religion. He relies mainly on scripts and reacts badly when his interlocutor deviates from these. He tends to host his own debate environment and is a terribly disingenuous moderator, often kicking or banning people just for offering reasonable points he cannot understand, with the accusation they are trolls or the like. His interlocutor here was previously kicked prior to this clip in the same stream and subsequently kicked again after the exchange you're about to see.
Sorry, I know you're going to give him words of wisdom. Let me just give my crazy Speaker's Corner flex. Yeah.
All right. I'll give you my sniper example. Yeah. So you've got a sniper who's about to take a shot. Yeah. Just agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But he can't take that shot until he gets permission from his superior officer.
Sorry,
Yeah.
say that again.
He can't take the shot unless he gets permission.
Okay.
Yeah? But the officer can't give him permission until he gets permission. And his officer can't give him permission until he gets permission. Ad infinitum. Will the sniper ever take the shot?
Why wouldn't he?
Because he would never.
Come on, man.
So this analogy is supposed to be a defeater for the notion of an infinite past, a past without a beginning. The analogy is supposed to show that when examining a feature of the world we see today, a feature that we determine is a product of a chain of prior instances of this feature, that this chain must be finite. For example, a caused event we ascertained happened today, we might determine was the effect of a prior cause, and this prior cause was the effect of a prior cause to that. This chain, we can conclude by induction, can continue on and on indefinitely. Supposedly, the analogy demonstrates that such chains must end. In this example, that there must be a first cause, an uncaused cause, and it is impossible for it to be otherwise. The analogy is implied demonstrates that it is impossible that this chain of causes could continue unbounded, infinitely into the past. So does the analogy work to this end? The TLDR is no, not even close. It's not analogous to an infinite regress. And from the outset it defines that the condition required to show that an infinite regress is possible, that an action happens, cannot be met. But the condition has nothing to say on the possibility of an infinite regress anyway. The analogy is not even wrong. It's not even addressing the question it is being offered as a response to. So whatever its conclusion, it is irrelevant to that question. Let's start off examining, does the analogy even have anything to say about the past? Can it be considered analogous to a past infinite? As presented, the analogy suggests we are at some point in time. Let's say this time is now. So the person asking if they should take the action begins questioning the first person in the chain. While asking a question takes some time, let's say a second, so the person finishes asking his question 1 second later, and the recipient of the question begins the relay of it. Each re-asking takes an additional second, on and on and on into the future, not to the past. It's worth noting that any answer, if it were possible to return it back down the chain, would also progress to the future. The response, in the same way as the question, needs to traverse the chain, and the relay of it propagates into the future. So this analogy so far is not even attempting to be analogous to a past infinite, it is talking of a future infinite. Also, we do not even need to imagine how the analogy would work out. It, by definition, makes it impossible a response can be given, as we shall see. So does the person act or not? In the analogy, there is no one who can actually give an answer to the question. Every participant in the endless chain can only relay the question to the next person. They cannot give an answer. There is no participant in the analogy who has a role to give an answer. So it is logically impossible an answer can be given, because there is no one defined in the analogy able to give it. We can achieve the same as the given analogy in a very similar but finite version. Let's say there are only a chain of 10 people to relay the question, and define that none of them can answer the question. We end up in exactly the same situation. no action takes place because it is impossible an answer can be given by definition, and so no answer can return down the chain. The person waiting for the permission will wait forever. So does that entail a chain of 10 questioners is logically impossible? Of course not. Does that we do not get an answer make the chain of 10 questioners logically impossible? Again, no. So describing an infinite chain of people propagating the question endlessly into the future is not describing something logically impossible. And that we have an endless wait does not make that infinite chain logically impossible either. The endless wait is defined in the analogy. It is a result of traversing the endless chain it describes. This infinite wait is exactly what we'd expect when we define the infinite chain of questioning. It is logically impossible that we get an answer, and this logical impossibility is because there is no one in the analogy who can give one. The second part of the analogy, the part that follows as if we could complete the endless, as if there were a possibility of an answer being given, when no one in the analogy can give one, is completely superfluous. We will never reach that part of the analogy. We will endlessly be relaying the question. So the person intended to carry out the action will endlessly be waiting for permission. The analogy makes taking action logically impossible, and this is not because permission was given or not, but because they are waiting endlessly for an answer that by definition cannot possibly come. So the analogy does not show anything about an infinite past or regress being logically impossible. It is completely disanalogous to this claim. How is the analogy similar to an infinite regress of causes? How is it showing this is impossible? Such being possible is actually the natural extension of our worldly experience. Things require prior causes, and those causes in turn have their own prior causes on and on. When they insist this chain must end, it is this that is at odds with our experience. Why, when everything has an apparent preceding cause, should we accept this chain ends? And the reason they give is because it must. All the analogy shows is that the apologists themselves cannot grasp the unintuitive nature of infinities, or that they are attempting to bamboozle people by playing on this. At best, the analogy is simply saying an endless chain, an infinite chain, does not end, which amounts to a tautology of what we mean by infinite. The analogy is using something defined as infinite and then saying it is impossible because it has no end. And that shows an infinite regress is impossible. But that's just a bare assertion. There is no reasoning behind this. I imagine if they did offer something more appropriate to address the question of if an infinite regression was possible, I'd wager it will somewhere within it appeal to the beginning of the beginningless, and they will say, the beginningless is impossible. Why, we ask? Because they assert it is impossible. Of course, the real reason that they need the past to be finite in all measures is because theologically they must ground out the origin of everything in their deity. That's their real reasoning, blind faith. That's all, folks. Hope you are having nicer weather than here. See you.